A two-time unicorn founder with an exit under his belt, Tony Jamous was selected into the Endeavor Network in 2021. Tony founded Nexmo, which was then acquired by Vonage in 2016, and then in 2020 founded Oyster, the only global employment solution with compliant automated hiring and deep local intelligence. In less than 2 years after its launch, Oyster was valued at more than $1 billion, officially making it a unicorn. Let's give a big round of applause to Tony as our keynote speaker, where he'll share his views on the transformative impact of remote work on emerging economies. Tony?
Hello, Cairo. Thank you for having me here today. And today I want to talk to you about the transformative effect of remote work on emerging economies, specifically on people here in the region. And I want to start with a few numbers. According to BCG, there are 90 million jobs going unfulfilled in the West. That's creating an 8.5 trillion economical loss. While at the same time, you have over 1 billion knowledge workers coming into the workforce in the next 10 years, mostly in emerging economies. So as was mentioned earlier, my name is Tony. I'm the CEO of Oyster HR, and I'm here to tell you today about how remote work can help in reversing brain drain in the region. And I hope by the end of this talk, you'll be as excited as I am about the future of work, a future that is more free, that is more equal, and more distributed. But before we dive into the topic, we're going to start with a video from Sharif, a remote worker from Egypt.
Hi, I'm Sharif Youssef, Senior Engineer at Oyster. Remote work has positively impacted my life in many ways. I used to spend a lot of time commuting to the office. And if you live in Egypt, you know how painful and time-consuming that can be. I also get to do a lot of hobbies that I stopped doing because I didn't have enough time. And of course, working remotely means better pay and more flexibility for where you work from, which is great. One of the ways that remote work has impacted my job performance as well, because now I'm able to spend more time and do stuff that I want and work out as well. That means I am able to be more productive at work and also work at the times that I am actually focused, that I feel like I can be more productive.
So Sharif is an employee at Oyster. So what is Oyster? Oyster is a global employment platform that enables any company in the world to hire anyone, anywhere. And I founded Oyster in January 2020, first and foremost as a mission-driven company, a company on a mission to reverse brain drain by allowing access or democratizing access to job opportunities around the world. And the story of Oyster is very interlinked to my personal journey. I was born in the region. I was born in Lebanon. And as a teenager, I had to flee my country for better economical opportunities in Europe. 13 years ago, I started my first hyper-growth technology company called Nexmo. It was an API business for building communication application. Grew to $100 million of revenue in the first 5 years. Went public in mid-2016 by merging with a company that was public on the New York Stock Exchange. And a few years ago, got acquired by Ericsson for $6.5 billion. I left that business. I took a year off to try to understand what I'm going to do next. And for me, it was important to align what I do with what I believe in. I wanted to build a purposeful business. And this is how Oyster was created in January 2020. As mentioned earlier, high growth, 0 to 60 million of revenue in 2.5 years, faster than Google, faster than Slack in terms of growth, and that led us to become a unicorn in no time as well. But today I want to talk to you about two things, really. The first thing is about why remote work is the future of work And secondly, we'll also talk about how we make remote work. I know that many of us got thrown into, especially managers and leaders, got thrown into remote work in a forced fashion because of the lockdown. We didn't have a manual of how to make it work for ourselves and for our staff. So let's start to talk about why remote work is the future of work. And really it's for 3 reasons. It's because it's better for business, it's better for people, and also better for the planet. Here we go. So why is it better for businesses? Let's start there. It is better for business because it gives you access to a wider talent pool, and it makes you a talent magnet. When Airbnb announced that they are allowing now remote work, their career website got 10x more traffic. At Oyster, we receive 13,000 job applications per month for a company that is merely 3 years old. So allowing global employment opportunities makes you a hiring machine and enables you to hire the best talent, no matter what it is. This is where we got the company name from. The world is your oyster when you're looking for talent. Remote work is also great for business because it unlocks planetary level diversity. At Oyster, we've hired over 700 people. These are our Oyster staff. They are distributed in 80 countries from over 100 nationalities, with 50% of the business are women, including in executive levels. And we all read the same Harvard Business Review articles about how diversity impacts positively your bottom line, your financial performance, how it impacts your culture. It becomes more creative, how it accelerates your decision making. So remote work has the potential to really unlock planetary level diversity for businesses. Remote work is better for business because also is more cost effective, especially today as businesses, specifically in technology, are being asked to become more efficient. Finding talent away from expensive talent hubs such as London, San Francisco, or Dubai enables you to access more cost-effective talent, even though you pay these people more what they can get locally. At Oyster, 80% of the people we hire are from emerging economies, and we bias our compensation philosophy to pay people more in emerging economies than elsewhere. So the case of remote work for business is clear. It is better for business, but it also has the opportunity to be better for people. Essentially, it can transform lives, as we've seen with the video of Sharif earlier. And first and foremost, it's about giving people freedom and flexibility that leads to higher level of engagement. Let me tell you the story about Christina that works for us in Manila. She's a mother of 2, and before joining Oyster and having a remote job, she used to commute 4 to 5 hours a day to go to work. You know, Manila is a pretty congested place. And she seldom could see her children during the week. Now, without feeling guilty, she can take her children to school in the morning, pick them up, spend quality time with them every day. And that money cannot buy. This level of engagement is priceless. At Oyster, we get voted one of the top 25 companies to work for by Glassdoor. Remote work is better for people as well because it creates equal opportunities. It removes the biases that we have in the workplace. People with disability, for instance, can have access to, can participate in the global economy. And people who are caretakers, predominantly women, can also have better access to equal opportunities. Actually, Ireland, they measured the impact of remote work on their economy, and they've recorded record high participation by women in the workforce, over 70%. And women in managerial roles have doubled from 15% to 30% in the last 3 years. But we're here today to talk about the impact of remote work on reversing brain drain. Brain drain is what keeps emerging economies emerging. Their best people leave to find better job opportunities in the West. And they merely send back home 5% of their income. With remote work, people can stay back in their local communities and have access to more paying jobs and can actually send to these economies hard currency that are really in need. And at Oyster, we are committing to sending over $1 billion of foreign direct investment into emerging economies by 2025, and we are on track to achieve that goal. Every year, we publish our impact report on our website when we interview the team members on our platform in emerging economies, and 74% of individuals report an increase in income. 64%, they say their ability to support their family has very much increased. 60% report improvement in quality of life, and that's higher for women. And 60% report a better access to foreign employer through the platform. So remote work can really transform people's life, specifically in emerging economies. But what we don't really talk about a lot is the impact of remote work on our planet. Removing the need to commute to energy-hungry offices reduces the footprint by half. Last year, Harvard Business have released their research. They found remote workers that work from home consume 50% less CO2 emission than people who commute and work in the office. And also, remote work has the opportunity to disperse people on the planet. We are pouring the equivalent of 4 times of New York City in concrete every year to build urban areas on the planet. And we all know and feel that's not a sustainable lifestyle. So that's why remote work is the future of work, because it's better for business, it's better for people, and better for the planet. Now, how do you make remote work? So at Oyster, we have done our own experiment since January 2020, but we also have interviewed over 1,000 customers who employed people in 180 countries about how they can make it work. And it's really about creating an intentional culture in these 3 areas. Be intentional in building trust, being intentional of building a remote operating model, and be intentional about measuring success and clarifying what success looks like. And why this is the foundation of building this culture, because we inherited today our managerial techniques from the Industrial Revolution. I mean, if you go today to a business school, you're going to learn about Fordism. Henry Ford invented the 5 days a week working week. But is that really relevant today as the world moves increasingly into a knowledge economy? Managers and leaders, when we were forced to move into the lockdown, we inherited the chip in our mind that if we see the person in seat, it means that they are productive. And when this happened in an accelerated way, we started distrusting our employees when we didn't see them in seat. And they felt that. They felt this lack of trust. And as a result, their performance was lowered. And that led to a vicious cycle of mistrust and low performance that created issues for both managers and employees and led to these low record engagement levels that we see today. That's why it's critical to intentionally build trust and start with you as a leader. You have to embody this trust in your company, in your behaviors. For me, what I thrive to become is a leader that provides 100% psychological safety to my employees. And I do that by not reacting to bad news negatively, for instance, by assuming best intent 100% of the time. And it's actually win-win for both myself and the company, because it's win for myself because I can have the freedom to live where I want to live. And after spending 25 years living in cities like London or San Francisco, I was able to move close to home, and I moved to the island of Cyprus, living more in harmony with nature, without losing any productivity. So I can have this freedom to live where I want to live. The second methodology to create a thriving remote work culture is to intentionally build an operating remote work model. At Oyster, we call it the tools and the rules. When somebody joins us through their onboarding process, we train them on what tool to use when to use Google Doc versus Notion, when to use Loom versus Loom, which records asynchronous videos. And for every meeting we do, there's 48 hours before there's going to be asynchronous documentation provided that enable people to engage with the content ahead of time, process any emotion that they had ahead of time, and come to the meeting present to be productive and engage positively. And I can tell you that these are the best meetings I've ever had in my career because they are productive and they are short. And as I mentioned earlier, because we came to this management techniques today that are inherited from Industrial Revolution, we used to measure output with presence. Like you go to a factory and then your presence there meant you can create X amount of widgets per hour. But today, that's not the case today. So you have to be also intentional in creating clear goals and expectation to tell people what success look like for them, no matter where they live and no matter which time zone they live in. And that's why it's important to be intentional in creating success metrics on the individual level, on the team level, and on the company level. At Oyster, we use a method called OKR, Objective Key Results, that many technology companies use to create that connection between the individual goals and the company goals. So that's why I believe the best companies of tomorrow are remote companies, because they are forced to build trust, they are forced to clarify the way they work, and they are forced to have clear success metrics. And these are the three foundations that make great companies great companies. But at the same time, you have the top talent in the world today, they know that they can have access to great remote job opportunities because they want this freedom, they want this flexibility. So they're navigating around companies that make them successful working remotely. So these companies that are investing in their cultures, they're also becoming talent magnets for the best talent in the world. And that's why they're going to become the best companies of tomorrow. So let's summarize what we talked about today. So remote work has a transformative effect on emerging economies. There is $8.5 trillion economical loss in the West that need to be fulfilled by jobs coming from elsewhere. Immigration laws are not helping. Immigration is becoming tougher for people around the world to immigrate to the West. So they have to find these people in other countries. And remote work is the future work because it enables businesses to access talent across the world. It enables businesses to unlock diversity and enable business to become more cost effective. And lastly, the best companies of tomorrow are remote work. And that's why I'm very excited today about the future of work, and I'd like to invite you to join me in building a future of work that is more free, more equal, and more distributed. Thank you for listening, and now we can have some questions. There's a question there. A mic, please, there. We'll get back to you later.
Hi, Tony. How are you? My name is Radwan Ayoub. I'm the CEO of ARMS IT. I just wonder...
Can you do closer to the mic, please?
Yeah. I just wonder about the challenges that the remote work is having. You mentioned everything nice about the remote work except the challenge.
There are definitely some challenges. Thank you for the question. One of the challenges is how do you connect and bond with people, for instance. So other challenges are you start feeling more isolated, right? These are the two major challenges that I've seen. So you can definitely create virtual experience that connects people together, especially if you're intentional about this. So for instance, at Oyster, we have we call donuts meetings, where we have like a random meeting that happen between people. We have monthly all hands meeting. It's followed by a party, a virtual party after that. And because when I talk to my team on a one-to-one level, I already know the information in advance. They already have sent me their content, their asynchronous content in advance. I can connect with them better on a personal level during the meeting, because we're not talking about results in the meeting. The results have been addressed before the meeting. But also, remote work does not mean that you don't see people in person. I do advise remote companies to meet from time to time. We meet every 3 months with my team. So we go somewhere in the world and we do an offsite. And half of that meeting is about connection with people, less about getting stuff done, because we have developed a model that enables us to get stuff done without being in person. So that's kind of number one, really about addressing this connectivity with people. The second challenge is about feeling isolated. We have, and you know, I do feel sometimes isolated myself in Cyprus. Let me tell you this. Before, when we had to commute to the office, we spent like an hour to go to the office to prepare. We spent 8 hours in the office and then go back home. Our only chance of socialization was at work, right? And it was great. You know, we made great friends at work. But for me, it doesn't have to be this way. You can build social connections outside of work as well, with your local community, and it's really shifted my view on that. And I started building my life locally with my local community to be able to fill that gap of isolation. But it's true that from time to time, I do feel isolated in my remote island in Cyprus. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Gentleman there was waiting.
Yeah, Tony, thank you for the amazing presentation. It's really inspiring to see entrepreneurs like you from the region, like with this success story. So I had actually a similar question, but I'm going to ask a different one. Your first startup, you managed to get to $1 billion in valuation in 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, or?
6.5 billion in 10 years, yeah.
MashaAllah. And the second one, it took you 2 years?
To 1 billion.
Okay.
We're still going. You know, we're still that technology that enables remote or asynchronous collaboration and communication has made huge progress in the last few years, and it's not going to stop here. We see continuous investment and innovation that is happening in enabling asynchronous way of communication and collaboration. Just to give you some examples, Notion, we use Notion as our knowledge management system. But it's not enough to just use Notion. You have to use it in a way that is intentional, that is adapted to your culture. We spend more energy to create our internal documentation at Oyster as much as we spend energy to create it for our customer-facing documentation. Because we want Christina in Manila to be collaborating with Valentina in Argentina across time zones, even if they are on the same team, right? So there's no doubt that technology, if it's still lagging today, is just going to catch up. The second question was about the regulatory and taxation framework maturity about remote work. Similarly, the world have seen, especially in the developed world, we have seen increasing regulation and taxation frameworks that governs remote work. It's yet to come in emerging economies. It's still less regulated. And specifically around the question of, is the employee a contractor or is the employee a full-time employee, right? So in countries where they have strong governance around their taxation, they are putting stringent regulations such as misclassification of contractor versus employee, but it's yet to catch up in emerging economies. I think emerging economies have other holes to close when it comes to taxation before getting to that point, but I have no doubt, again, that as they see this opportunity become bigger, they're going to put this regulation. And actually, remote work is better for government as well. We didn't talk about it. I mean, especially for governments in the region. Take Jordan, for instance. They have highly competent workforce, not enough job opportunities. By allowing, instead of going and trying to incentivize Amazon and give them tax breaks to come in Jordan and open an office, they can incentivize companies from abroad to employ people in Jordan, staying in Jordan, and reduce their unemployment rates and increase their tax income. So remote work is also great for government. Thank you for the question. 2 questions. There.
First of all, I want to tell you that your success is very impressive, and I want to thank you for your time. My name is Yazan Tadros. I'm the founder of EduHacks. We are a very small team today with many juniors. We've realized that the best mix for being effective is a 50-50% working from home and from office. My question to you is, does remote work is better for senior level executives, or is it also better for medium and large businesses rather than small ones?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Look, we have seen remote work being implemented from an organization of all sizes in the last few years, right? From big multinationals, specifically that have a lot of real estate costs. Take HSBC, they have reduced 30% of their real estate costs. That's a huge impact on their real estate costs to small startups. But for the younger generation, there's been talks that they don't get mentoring, right? If they're working from home. But you have people today getting engineering degrees online. They are getting MBAs online, right? So it's really about the intention you put in. Like at Oyster, we have training programs. We have the Oyster Academy that is designed to enable people to become better remote workers. It's actually open source. Everybody here can go access the Oyster Academy for free. Even if you're a manager, you can get better at becoming a better remote manager. If you're an HR professional, you want to implement a remote work model in your company, you can also do that. So it's really about the intentionality. If you really focus on growing your people and investing in their future, and it with intention, then everything is possible.
Thank you very much. I am Sinan Taifour, the co-founder and CEO of Maqsam. I'm wondering, in this vision of the world, you have the companies that, for example, are in Europe and in the US getting access to talent that is in, let's say, our region, where it's typically cheaper for them, but the person in our region is getting paid more, which is great for them. But for local companies in the region, the equation kind of works. We get to offer services in the region at a price that is cheaper than the international price because we have access to the talent that's cheaper. Your model is just pushing the talent price up, up, up. How do you end up seeing the world when this happens? Does it mean there are no local companies?
It's a great question. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe there was no local companies anymore, right?
Yep.
So what I expect is as these local economies start receiving all these influx of foreign direct investment in the form of salaries, the level of life is going to rise, right? So your employees is going to ask for more salaries, life is going to get more expensive, and guess what? Emerging economies might stop one day being called emerging economies. That's the whole point of it, and create a more equal world when it comes to wealth equality. That's the whole point, and I do believe that's happening already in certain job categories. Think about software developers. A software developer in Argentina used to be paid $40,000 a few years ago. Now it's $100,000. Right? They don't have to move to Silicon Valley to do so. Salaries in Silicon Valley are still $250,000 if you're 5 years experienced developer. So there's still a gap, but that gap is shrinking, and it's shrinking fast, specifically for roles that are more compatible with remote work, whether it's software developer, product managers, salespeople, customer services, all these standardized jobs. They're becoming, the world is their oyster. They have one planet in which they can play. And that's great news for your company, it's great news for the country you're in, and it's great news for your employees. There.
Yeah. Sorry. So
Oh,
I'm
there.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you for this great event, and thank you, Dina and Endeavor team. I'm Mohammed Zatara, founder of Wajiz. And just I have one question. We are struggling to build the culture while the team is not exist in the office. So this is what's happened with us. And we have a lot of freelancers, they work with us, as we have very many editors, writers. So we are an audio app doing book summaries and biographies and doing full audio books also. So we are struggling to build the culture while the remote working is happening. So how we can solve this problem? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And it's really hard to build any culture, right? So I think it's before, when we used to go to the office, the culture was created kind of organically, right? Without much of the control, let alone much of the influence, let alone the control of the founding team of the culture. Now, remote work creates an opportunity for you as a founder to become more intentional in building your culture. And when we started this business, we really had to sit down with experts on culture and discuss, okay, what does it look like to build a thriving remote work culture and build values such as build trust. Actually, building trust is one of our core 3 values that at Oyster, because such a foundational element of working remotely. But it is hard. It is not easy to build intentional cultures. However, it pays dividend for the long term, right? If you have higher level of engagement, higher level of productivity, more satisfied employees that feels cared for by the management team, these are value to your business that are priceless. But it is definitely hard to do if you're not intentional. So you need to be intentional in how you design your culture. In the same way you design your marketing program, the same way you design your sales program, you have to design your culture. Thank you for the question. There.
Last question, please.
Thank you, Tony. Have you seen any kind of correlation between productivity and these kind of monitoring tools that some companies use, like to take a snapshot of the computer, or like log all these kinds of activities? I've seen both arguments where some companies have said, yes, when we require these kind of software to be installed on our remote workers, it does increase. But you're all about remote work, and I'm sure you've experienced a lot of it. What's your take on it?
Well, great question, because using monitoring tools, it's going to send the message to your team is that we don't trust you. And when your teammate feels they're not trusted, their engagement is going to get lower, and therefore their productivity is going to get lower. So it's critical that you don't use these tools, right? Unfortunately, the use of these tools grew 300% in the last few years. But it doesn't have to be this way in your company, right? You have to embody this value of building trust. It starts with you as a leader. And by the way, it's great for your mental health, because if you're defaulting to trust, then you're not kind of eaten by all these thoughts of whether your employees are working or not working. You have to let go of that. Hope this helps. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Great to be here.